Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Fromhertz, and this is your end of week recap for Friday, April 21st. And very, well, I was going to say an interesting week, but maybe that's when you look at the price action for the week in the indices, probably not. A lot of words probably come to mind for this week and actually what we've been seeing for April, but it's whippy. It is, I called it, the word that I used yesterday was churning. And you could probably use choppy as well for the indices. But the goal of this video is for you to obviously, take a look at what's going on in the indices and then notice where there's what areas are performing both well and poorly as well to the downside, to kind of show you what in this market does have some momentum to it. So risk disclaimer in front of you, everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. Also, make sure that you check out TribecaTradeGroup.com. That is where you can sign up to be a member of our trading room and get some of these ideas and ideas and chart setups and so forth real time. All right, so yes, the themes I have up here is chop for the day and for the week, and actually for the month to date. Biotech has really been the story. There's a couple other stories in there too. Home builders have done well. I'm going to bring up so again, this is just the performance for the day, percentage change versus open. That's something that I look to monitor just to see where there is strength, not only for the whole day, but whether or not, some things were bought, like biotech was bought today, finished up 2% and made a 2% move from the open. On the flip side, a lot of things like metals and mining, right? Even though Nucor had a good day yesterday, I think FCX Freeport brought that group down. Oil services, which Schlumberger reported, that group down 1.7% for the day. So some strength, but also some weakness. And of course, when you look at the S&P, right, and you see it basically flat again for the day, that is basically what you're going to find. Is you're going to find some areas that are doing okay, some areas that are potentially trending, and some areas that are trending but also to the downside. So here's just quickly the performance for the week, and I'll go into some of these. You can see for the week, right, because this is a weekly review video, SPY was essentially flat. It was down 0.1%. Remember last week, I think it was up about 0.8. So again, April has all been about small trading ranges and not much overall action in the indices. The Dow or diamonds were down 20 basis points for the week. Small caps actually outperformed. They were up 60 basis points, even though the small caps, and I'll bring up most of these charts, the small caps just continue to kind of not be able to break out of that April value area. That's something that as the month goes on, it will be interesting to see, because it's not breaking below, it hasn't returned to the point of control here, but it's not able to get over this 178.52, at least on a closing basis. We had one day where it almost did, next day completely rejected. So interesting. Here's of course the S&P. We might as well bring up these charts too. There's not much to really comment on here. We are above the 20-day moving average, but we're below, a little bit below the 5-day moving average. Also this virgin point of control that was taken out, haven't been able to really reclaim that with any significant movement. Qs, same picture here. They're managed to stay above the 20-day moving average, kind of tested that a little bit today. Also above value for the month. That level's 312.50. And but sitting below the 5-period moving average, and again has basically got nowheresville this month, right? We knew that that was going to be a tough thing to get over, that red line, that overhead supply, and there's been nothing but consolidation since we've taken that out. Again, so important, for me to be using volume at price, and to know that it was a potential outcome, once we hit overhead supply like this virgin point of control, to say that, that there's going to be some consolidation. There's been a whole lot of consolidation. I think you can agree with me on that one. All right, so back to the performance for the week. let's see. So small caps did outperform. Bonds were down, but just slightly, 60 basis points. Gold was down 1.1%. This should be in green. I apologize. So we'll change this to green because the dollar was up. But again, same thing with bonds, not a huge move, up 30 basis points for the week. And both value and growth did the same this week, down 0.1%. One thing that stood out to me was, and I commented, I think on maybe on Wednesday or Thursday this week, is the IBD 50 list, right? It's not an ETF that's been super strong, right? If we go back to my sheet over here for the month to date, I believe it's up 1.7%. I can check that because I thought it was up a little bit more than that. And I think in my other spreadsheet, I do have it up differently. Let me see. Let me just check, make this check. For the week, it was up 2.7%. Maybe that's so that's okay. I got that backwards. So let's go back here. Let's start from here. Yes, for the week, it was up 2.7%. For the month, it's only up 1.7%. All right. And year to date, that ETF is up about 10%. Still pretty decently under the Qs and pretty decently under, even the ARK Innovation ETF, but it's been showing some strength. So, again, it just shows you and that's an ETF that a lot of people, a lot of growth traders track, right? So they like that when you've got that nice outperformance by the IBD 50 names, and we'll go over a couple of those names. I think that are in that ETF that excelled. So again, there was there was some progress being made some places of the market. Interesting, when you look at the 5-day performance of the ARK, of course, that has a big position in Tesla, but that flipped. That was down 3% for the week, right? It's just interesting that, some of these ETFs have similar themes and they can have very different performance, right? Again, IBD 50 is a different theme than innovation, but still a lot of growth. So here's where and I'm gonna nail this point home in just a second. When you look at the performers for the week, when you look at sectors, home builders were up 5%. They had a big week. That was also, they looked very good. That was our sector to kind of watch this week, and that certainly did very well. I mean, that's there hasn't been much to complain about in this group. Just very strong overall, even though it had a down day. It's one of the few sectors, if I could bring up the weekly chart, that's above its value area for the year. And here's the move that's happening, right? And right, and again, even though it had a big gap up day, so that might need to get filled. Toll Brothers, which is what I was in earlier this week, which I had a nice winner on, and I took it off yesterday, and I actually re-added it today, right? Once it filled the gap, right? So we'll see. If it doesn't hold the 5-day moving average, I'll jump out of it. But I just thought this coming back to ground, I would say, to me was a place to kind of re-add the position. All right, and here's what's interesting, right? So you must be asking, right? I've mentioned biotech a couple times. Where is biotech on this list? Well, really interesting, because depending on which ETF you use for biotech, one had massive outperformance and the other one didn't. So IBB, as well as if you look at, let's see, XLV is not even on the list for leaders this week, but was up 80 basis points. So not bad, outperforming the market. But if you take a look at the XBI ETF, right, that's the one that's equally weighted rather than market cap weighted, and that ETF was up, I think, around 5% for the week. So I have that in my spreadsheet here. I don't have the performance. This is for the month, right? So I also wanted to go over monthly performance with you. I'll give you the numbers right now but I think it was, I want to say 5.2%. Yep, it was up 5.2% this week. So again, equally weighted biotech, much different than market cap weighted biotech, right? Same name on the ETF, but different weighting scheme, and one has massive outperformance versus the other, up 5% versus not even up 1%. All right, I thought let me just round out the rest of the performance for the week, and then we can talk a little bit about the month so far. All right, so solar had a good week. That was up 1.8%. Consumer staples had a good week too. That was helped by Procter and Gamble. A couple other names showed up on my scans too. But things like, the banks were up this week. They outperformed. They were up 1.5%. Utilities up 1%. Financials in there too, which of course there's not just banks in that ETF. There's things like insurance companies and exchange stocks and so forth. That was also up 1%. Aerospace and defense did okay. On the downside, I've already mentioned metals and mining, but they were actually down 4% for the week. Look at oil and gas this week, down 5.5% for the week. Blockchain stocks, was actually surprised to see that, but they did sell off at the towards the end of the week, and that group, very volatile group, was down 7.7% for the week. Clean energy stocks, which is odd to see that because solar stocks were up, but clean energy was down 3.3%, right? A lot of different things in that ETF. Perhaps Tesla is in that ETF. Steel also down 3% for the week. So again, very interesting to see some of these, names that are groups that really didn't perform well this week. All right, and I just wanted to go over too, just so that you have an update, because it is the 21st of the month, and next week, big week of earnings, right? Huge amount of reports that we're going to get next week, but once we start next week, that'll be what, the 24th. So we're running out of a month that's basically gone, hasn't gone anywhere so far. So sectors for the month, biotech, all about biotech, not just biotech, by the way, medical devices, right? That's been a group that I've mentioned several times over the past couple of weeks about, showing some strength. I'm going to compare those two charts for you really quick. We already did the home builders ETF, but so here's the thing that I find really difficult, because I'm a trend trader. I don't mess with a lot of things below the 200-day moving average, but notice how this is like, it's the mirror opposite, right? So this ETF was going sideways, 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 finally broke higher. And then all of a sudden, once we got to February, really got hit pretty hard, right? And it didn't stop at the trend line. It continued to break down, but now we've got to push back to the 200-day moving average. So it's going to be really interesting here. I mean, there's a lot of strength, so I would favor this to get over the 200-day moving average and perhaps the trend line, but who knows, right? We've seen with this market that sometimes momentum can be here one day and gone another. So I think this is really going to be interesting to watch after it's had this big recovery. What is this going to do next? The biotech, the equally weighted biotech ETF, right? Notice it's at the point of control. Not really much to go on here other than it did manage to find support very nicely in here and bounce so far. The ETF that I think looks much better, and again, it's going to be hitting some resistance here at 57.60, but a lot more strength over the 200-day moving average, over the value area for the month, and trending quite nicely. This is the medical devices ETF. So really nice performance in here. This was helped by things like ISRG this week. Medtronic I've mentioned Medtronic a couple times this week, but yeah, this had an announcement today. Didn't close near the highs, but I just like the fact that this is back over its 200-day moving average, and you can use that as a stop, something it hasn't done for about a year and a half. So you go through these names, right, and there's a lot of strength. PODD is another one that's been showing some strength, even though didn't make it out to new high or didn't hold new highs. Not Skechers. I'm thinking of Stryker, which is SYK, but that's chart of Skechers is not bad either. Here's Stryker, which also I think hit a 52-week high this week. So again, a lot of strength. The Thinkorswim, of course, not cooperating here, but yeah, there you go. So again, a lot of strength in that group. Just to round out the performance for the month so far, again, right? We're not through the month yet, but interesting what's not performing. You know, clean energy stocks, Chinese internet names are down 9% this month. Pot stocks down 9%. I'm not sure even why I still have that on my list, but I do, so I'll mention it. But the semis, right? You know, the semis looks so here. I was referring before to momentum is here one day and then gone another. You know, the semis were showing some great strength for a little bit, but not this month. They're down 5% in one of the worst performing groups so far this month, right? A few other names in here too. Tech is even down 2%, right? So all that fuss about big tap, you know, only you know, a couple names driving the market, or not driving the market, because they do drive the market because they're the biggest names in the indices, but only the participation's happening in the FANG stocks. That's one of the most, you know, worst things that you could possibly hear, because that's not true. Look at what's performing, right? Tech, that big tech is not performing for the month, right? It's been home builders, medical devices, biotech, healthcare, right? Financials for this month. Okay. So, you know, when it's okay to say that the big companies drive the performance, because they do in a market cap weighted index. That's just straight math, right? Bigger companies in a market cap weighted index are going to push around that index. But that doesn't mean, and here's the big thing, right? That doesn't mean that that is the only thing that's performing in this market. It's just skewed because that's how an index works, a market cap weighted index, right? But that doesn't mean that there's not other areas of the market performing. And I think this gives you a good example. I mentioned I would talk about a couple names that, you know, this ELF is just unbelievable. I made a funny joke, or at least I thought it was funny. You may not, but I said, what's hotter right now? The Tampa Bay Rays in baseball, which are doing very well, or ELF. I think you would have to say ELF, which is up like, I'm not even going to count the days, but that looks like about more than 10, you know, somewhere around 10 days, you know, straight green. I mean, quite unbelievable, because, you know, you don't really have another name that's doing that in the group. So clearly something has been going on with ELF. Alta has done well, but it's not anything near the situation that you see. You know, again, an uptrend, very nice, you know, chart right now, has not made a higher high yet, but still not the same, you know. And then of course, you know, things like, you know, I haven't traded, you know, this is a name that I like reluctantly got into because yeah, over the years I just really haven't been a fan of this stock, but hey, it was a nice breakout and I took it. And I took another target in this trade today. Like another name too that people were all over too is this HIMS, right? HIMS and HERS, right? So stuff like this has been really, you know, again, most of these names are in that IBD 50 list, right? This is another one that I'm in. I'm not in all these names. I'm not in HIMS, even though that was a name on our watch list. But ON really nice, right? And this closed very nicely, all right? And then IoT, right, which is a name that I've traded. I didn't get involved in this one this week, but super performance. It was one that was on our watch list this week, but I you know, I don't take every single trade that's on the watch list. Sadly, I didn't take this one, but really nice, right? And I think a lot of people were waiting for that. So I'll leave it here, guys. We'll go over many more names as we get closer to Monday. And I hope to see you guys in the trading room. Check out TribecaTradeGroup.com. Have a great weekend, everybody.